During my high school basketball days, my varsity coach would make comments saying that we're just going through the motions. There'd be times like during a practice or even a game, he would just look at us and say, "Men, you're just going through the motions. You're not playing the game of basketball." See, going through the motions, like we are dribbling, we're passing, we're shooting, we're doing all the things that we're supposed to be doing, but we're kind of just doing it. We're not truly playing the game of basketball. Sometimes we might have these same things going on in life. Like we are just going through the motions. Kind of like we wake up, eat breakfast, go to work, come home, eat dinner, go to bed, and then we do the exact same thing again the next day. We're not really living life. We're not doing what is needing to be done, almost kind of like an autopilot in a way. This has even happened in people's Christian life, their life with Christ, where their minds are just going through the motions. They're on that autopilot adjustment where they read the Bible, they pray, they go to church, but they're not walking with Christ. They're just going through the motions. It isn't real worship. And as we're starting this new series on epic events, let us take an inventory on worship and ask yourself, am I giving genuine worship to Jesus? And today we're actually going to be looking at genuine worship. So, with this series on epic events, we're taking a look at the events that are leading up to the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. In fact, this is going to take us all the way through Easter. And today we're going to be looking at Jesus being anointed. So, again, this is Jesus being anointed. We're looking at John chapter 12. We're going to be looking at our first point here, which is Mary washes. So Mary washes our first point in our first three verses here in John chapter 12, which says, 6 days before the Passover, Jesus arrived at Bethany, where Lazarus lived, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. Here a dinner was given in Jesus' honor. Martha served, while Lazarus was among those reclining at the table with him. Then Mary took about a pint of pure nard, an expensive perfume. She poured it on Jesus' feet and wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. So, the 6 days before the Passover, this is the Saturday before Passover. So, this is the last Saturday before Easter week. So, the next day is the triumphal entry according to this timeline. So, this is dinner time. So, this is after the Sabbath. So, the way Sabbath worked in the Jewish customs is that Sabbath started sundown on Friday night and then goes until sundown Saturday night. And so most likely the sun is down at this time. It's set, it's dark, and so they're having dinner. It's after Sabbath. And we see Lazarus is among the people who are there. If you remember last week when we closed the I Am series where Lazarus was raised from the dead, this is that same Lazarus. And so Mary and Martha and Lazarus, they're having this big event, this big dinner in Jesus' honor to thank him for what he has done for raising Lazarus from the dead. And in here we see Mary and Martha, they're doing kind of like just the same things that they've always been doing. That we're seeing their character being presented here. You see, we talked about how in the book of Luke, chapter 10, we see Mary and Martha. There's that disagreement where Mary, she's sitting at the feet of Jesus, listening to his teachings, trying to just take in as much of his words as possible. Where we have Martha, she's like cleaning up the house, she's in the kitchen trying to like serve probably the best food that they have for Jesus, and Martha is getting all upset that Mary isn't helping out and stuff, all like that. But then we also see last week Mary and Martha again, um, and like with Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead. And then this week again, we see the same things going on where Martha, she's cooking, she's preparing everything, serving her guests, but then Mary, she comes in and does something very unique, an extra form of worship. She takes this pint of pure nard, like this flask, alabaster flask, which we see the same account in other gospels, such as Matthew 26 and Mark 14, where we see a description of this jar. It's an alabaster flask. And this perfume that's in this flask, it's pure nard. It's a very expensive perfume. This is typically something that is used for very special occasions. And so Mary, she takes this perfume and then she pours it on the feet of Jesus and then takes her hair and then wipes his feet. This is a unique event because what Mary is doing, she's lowering herself as a servant. She's not washing the feet, she's preparing Jesus for his death and burial. You see, typically with a perfume or some type of fragrance like this, it's not used until after someone has died. Because when someone has died, well, they don't exactly smell like roses a few days later. See, they have to put on this like some type of perfume, some type of fragrance in order to make sure that the smell of decaying and rotting dead bodies is going throughout the whole town. So when someone has died, they take like some type of perfume, something that actually smells nice, and they would pour it all over the body after they have died while they're in the tomb. And I wouldn't be surprised if they'd done the same thing with Lazarus during the time frame that he had died. But Mary, she's doing this before Jesus has died. And it's unique because this this particular perfume, it's not exactly the like something that you would just get at a drugstore down the street. See, when we understand this pure nard, this alabaster flask, when we put all the gospels together of this particular account, when we put them all together, we understand that this is not exactly a $10 jar of perfume here. You see, this particular perfume was imported, most likely from northern India. So if you think about the distance between northern India and Israel, they're not exactly next door neighbors. So most likely this perfume is a lot of money. This would be a very expensive type of perfume, and I'm going to be talking about that later on. But Mary here, she's spending this time, she's doing this to Jesus because she's wanting to just show as much worship to Jesus as she could. Because she knows that there's only a short amount of time that they can have Jesus, and not just at their house, but just here on earth. And so she wanted to maximize her time, maximize her worship towards Jesus. So she takes this perfume, pours it on his feet as a form of worship, anointing him. And then we get to our second point, which is Judas objects. Our second point, Judas objects, which this starts in verse 4, which says, "But one of the disciples, Judas Iscariot, who was later to betray him, objected. Why wasn't this perfume sold and the money given to the poor? It was worth a year's wages." He did not say this because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. As keeper of the money bag, he used to help himself to what he was put into it, or what was put into it. So Judas, one of the disciples, he sees this event is happening and he's just saying, "What is going on here? This perfume, this special nard, it's worth a year's wages, and all you did was just dump it on the feet of Jesus." See, for him, all he's seen is just a bunch of waste. Now, some of your Bibles might give the amount that this particular perfume is worth. It might say 300 denarii. That's a year's wages. A denarius, like one denarius, or that's the singular of denarii, that's about a day's wages. So that's just an extra example. So 300 denarii, that's literally a year's wages. Now, if we calculate it into modern day currency, that's about $10,000. That's an expensive perfume, isn't it? So Judas, he's just seen $10,000 thrown away, pretty much. This expensive perfume, you could have sold this and given it to the poor, he says. And all you do is just dump it on someone's feet. A complete waste. Now, most likely, Judas was not thinking about the poor. In fact, he was most likely thinking about himself. As we see here, he was the keeper of the money bag, and he would sometimes take a little something for himself. He would take the coins for the ministry and give them to himself. Now, most likely by this time, Judas has already made the decision that he's done with Jesus and he just wants to just go away. But before he does, he wants to make sure that he has a little something for himself. Now, maybe he's trying to reimburse himself, trying to get the money back of what he could have made over the last few years as he was following Jesus. And so when he sees this particular event happening, he just thinks of all the money that was just wasted and probably some of the money that he could have taken for himself. Now, in Matthew chapter 26, we see that after this event, like where we see that event happening in this same event happening in Matthew, it's recorded that Judas left after this event, that he just decided to leave after seeing this event occurred, which most likely started the conversations with some of the chief priests to organize his official betrayal. So most likely Judas was saying, "That's it. I'm done. I've had it. I can't wait any longer. I need my money now." And so we first see all this worship, the stuff that Mary is doing, trying to give as much worship as she can to Jesus. And then we see Judas all upset because all he sees is the wasted money. But then we have Jesus defends. And that's our third point, starting in verse 7, where Jesus defends, which says, "Leave her alone," Jesus replied. "It was intended that she should save this perfume for the day of my burial. You will always have the poor among you, but you will not always have me." So Jesus, he's defending Mary during this time because he's trying to say, listen, this isn't a waste. She's preparing me for burial. So maybe it's possible that Mary knew that Jesus was going to die soon. It's possible because with Jesus, and when we understand this timeline, Jesus, like this, again, this is the Saturday before the week of Easter, before Easter week. And the next Saturday, he's dead, lying in the tomb. So there's not a whole lot of time here before all that happens. Jesus literally, he's saying, like, hey, you're not going to always have me. Again, the very next week, he's going to be dead. And then after he rose from the dead, he was only around for another 40 days. So there's literally not much time left with Jesus here on earth. And so then Jesus is saying, listen, you'll always have the poor. There's always been people who are struggling financially. And even 2,000 years later, there are still people who are suffering financially, people who are still poor, people who are on the street corners with signs that says, hey, I need some help. But they didn't have Jesus every single day. They didn't have Jesus that whole time. And so Jesus, he accepted this true form of worship, this genuine worship of Mary. Jesus defended Mary. He appreciated this worship because he knew that this perfume was not something that's cheap. As we talked about before, 300 denarii, a year's wages, or $10,000 in our currency today. For us, that's like a car, a used car, but that's a car. And so Jesus knew that this was genuine worship because Mary was giving up something special. Mary was probably saving this for a special occasion, but she said, I'm giving this to Christ. She made a sacrifice, something that she cared for deeply, and she gave it to Christ to worship him. It's easy to give up something that we can already give up, isn't it? It can be easy to just give up a small amount or something that's not close to us. You know, maybe you have like some clothes in your closet and you just say, well, this isn't exactly that special to me, so I can just donate it. Or maybe there might be something that's very close to you that you say, I'm not going to give this up. I will never give this up. Maybe Now, sure, it might be another t-shirt, but it's a t-shirt you got for a particular event. Maybe you won a hot dog eating contest and you got a commemorative t-shirt, even though maybe it happened like 20 years ago and the shirt doesn't fit anymore. It's got holes in it and stuff. It's like, well, you can't give that up, right? Now, I know I'm just using the t-shirt as just as the example, but what if there's something else that we struggle to give up for Christ? It's easy to give up something that we're okay with not living with, but what if there's something that we genuinely love, but we just can't give it up? And that's what Mary did. She gave up something of value to her, something so precious to her, not just because it's financial, but because it was special for her, and she gave it to Christ. That's a really big challenge for all of us. Giving up something that we care about, that we love, but then giving it to Christ. Now, in our final section, we see the people believe. Like this is our fourth point. The people believe. This is verses 9 through 11, which says, "Meanwhile, a large crowd of Jews found out that Jesus was there and came, not only because of him, but to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. So the chief priests made plans to kill Lazarus as well, for on account of him, many of the Jews were going over to Jesus and putting their faith in him." So, as we talked about earlier in this passage, it's the 6 days before Passover. Now, this is one of the big events that occurs during the year for the Jewish people. So there are people who come all over the world, well, the known world at that time, but people are coming from everywhere for this festival. And the news of Jesus spread throughout Israel, throughout the known world. And so if you had a chance to see Jesus, the miracle worker, this great teacher, you want to see him, don't you? It's like one of those celebrities you see on TV. If you had a chance to see them, if they're in Chicago, you would want to figure out, okay, where do I have to go in order to see one of my favorite celebrities? So that's how people were seeing they like this person they hear that Jesus is in town. Yeah, let's go see him. But on top of that, they want to see Lazarus because people are saying, like, yeah, Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. They would want to see that for themselves. Now, maybe some people knew Lazarus, maybe they were aware of Lazarus, so maybe they heard of his death, but then all of a sudden, wait, this guy's alive now? I got to see this with my own eyes. And because of that event where Lazarus came back to life, where Jesus rose Lazarus from the dead, people were putting their faith in Jesus. People realized that Jesus was not just this ordinary man. He's not just a teacher. He's not this cool dude that you want to hang out with. But Jesus is something else. He is God. And so that people were putting their faith in Jesus, but the chief priests did not like this. They didn't like that people were following Jesus, that they were looking to this carpenter as this Messiah, this new teacher. They didn't like how people were following him instead of their ways, instead of their laws. And so because they hated that so much, they wanted to kill Jesus. But more than that, we see in here that they made that in verse 10. So the chief priests made plans to kill Lazarus as well. Now, what was Lazarus's crime? What did he do to be put to death? Nothing. He literally did nothing, but yet the chief priests wanted to kill him. The reason why the chief priests wanted to put to death Jesus and Lazarus was because Lazarus was the evidence that Jesus is the Messiah. And they did not like that. They didn't like how people were looking at this guy instead of them. How all the evidence, all the truth was being pointed to Jesus. But see, Jesus did not come the way that the chief priests wanted. They wanted someone to save them from the Romans. But Jesus wasn't coming to save them from the Romans. He was coming to save them from sin. But the chief priest said, nah, we don't want that. Just save us from Rome. People were putting their faith in Jesus because Lazarus was the evidence that Jesus is the Messiah. So from this account, we get three applications. Our first one is genuine worship calls for sacrifice. Genuine worship calls for sacrifice. See, Mary knew that giving up this special perfume, she was giving up something special to her. It's worth a year's wages. But she said, I'm giving this to Christ. It was special to her. Mary could have just said, you know what, I'm just going to save this for later. What can I give up that's a little bit easier for me and that my heart is not going to be all burdened and sad if I give this up. See, genuine worship calls for sacrifice. It's giving up something that you love and giving it to Christ. There was this video that I saw where it was it was a worship service where people are singing praises to God. And the worship director, the leader, he's asking people, hey, what are you willing to give up for Christ? If it's a physical object, bring it up to the stage and lay it here. Lay it like you're laying it at the feet of Christ. Now, maybe there's some emotional things that they want to give up. So it's like they would go talk to somebody else to give that up. But if it's a physical object, bring it up to the stage, put it on the stage like you're laying it at the feet of Christ. One person gave up a few bucks, laid it on the stage. A few people were putting up like little trinkets or something, willing to give up smaller items. Then all of a sudden, there was this young man, probably college age. He walks up to the stage. He lays down his phone. Literally, he takes this and just lays it down on the stage. He's willing to give that up for Christ. Now, 20 years ago, giving up your phone might not be a big burden, a big struggle. But today, people say that this is your life. People can literally use their phones to lock their houses, lock their doors. They can use their phone to start up their car. Literally everything that people do in life is through their phone. And this young man says, I'm giving this to Christ. That's a big sacrifice. Now, maybe the phone situation is not for you, and that's fine. I'm not saying that it's for you, but that was him. He gave up something close to him, Christ. So that was genuine worship. It calls for sacrifice. That was our first application. Our second one is genuine worship follows godly priorities. Genuine worship follows godly priorities. Judas focused on the money that was wasted. Judas, he thought about the poor and how much that the poor could benefit from all of this. What could we do with all that money? But he was so focused on the money, he forgot about the worship. He forgot about what Mary was doing, that she was worshiping Jesus. Now, granted, Judas, being the thief that he was, how he would just take a little bit of money out of the money bag for himself, trying to get a trying to get back the money that he probably would have lost all those years following Jesus, trying to reimburse himself. How he focused more about the money than he did about the worship of Jesus Christ. Now, I do want to make one thing clear. I'm not saying it's not important to look at the finances. I'm not saying like ignore the finances, but don't let the finances cloud your judgment to distract ourselves from genuine worship of Jesus Christ. So we saw genuine worship requires sacrifice, and then genuine worship follows godly priorities. And then finally, genuine worship brings you closer to Christ. See, people heard that Jesus brought Lazarus back from the dead, so they wanted to see Jesus. They wanted to see him. And because of that event, because of this unique event, people started to believe in Jesus, realizing that this guy is more than just a teacher, more than just a person you want to talk to, but that he is the word that became flesh, that he is God in human form. See, friends, when we give up something that's close to us, it brings us closer to God. It's not easy because when you give up something that you love, when you sacrifice something, it requires a lot of strength, a lot of courage to give that up. And for Mary, well, for her, it was to give up this special perfume. Remember, this perfume most likely imported from northern India, a year's wages. She said, "I'm not going to keep it for myself. I'm giving this to Jesus." So, friends, as we go through this series of epic events, let this ignite the spark of genuine worship. Let's close in prayer.